Okay, so we've got Dune. Currently, everyone's talking about Dune, how good it is, how visually stunning it is, how great the music is. And I do agree. It looks stunning, it sounds amazing, but I've got one very big question. Dune, what happened? I mean, there are just so many odd choices. For the story in general, for the character, but also for the plot. I mean, to be honest, the family Atreides is just they're just stumbling, bumbling idiots in this whole movie, and they don't do anything. It is such a weird movie, to be honest. It is very enjoyable just for the music and the visuals. I watched it now 3 times. First one, I enjoyed it very much. It was new, it was shining, it was like, ooh. The second time, it was rather boring because you thought about it a bit more, and it just stopped to make a lot of sense what all the characters is doing. Thus, I've also read the books, and the movie is based on the first novel by Frank Herbert called Dune. It was published in 1965, and it is split in 3 parts. I'm sorry. And the movie is based on the first part and like the first 50 pages of the second part, which is a choice the miniseries from 2000 also made, but I don't know, it was a bit odd in the movie. At least I think it was. So, but now let's talk about the changes. First, I must say, it is so weird. Why in God's name is Charney narrating Dune? Because as some of you have might seen the older movies, it was always Princess Irulan who narrated it, because that was based on the books. Every chapter starts with like a short sentence or a couple of sentences from the books Irulan writes later on. And they just changed it to Charney. I've got no clue why, but they just do it. But also the structure is interesting, to be honest, because they changed a lot of stuff in the movie. So the movie starts on planet Coudln, and actually I like the idea of that. I love to see planet Coudln. It looked amazing. It was so watery and wet, and I loved it. Even though it was a bit weird that the architecture looked rather similar to the one on Arrakis, but eh. And the main character is Paul Atreides, and his father Leto is asked by the Emperor to go to planet Arrakis, which contains the spice, which is responsible for space traveling, or you need it to space travel. So he does. And in the movie, there's just like some spaceships coming saying, okay, you've got to go. And he's like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna go, even though we already knew that, but it's a ceremony, so let's do it anyways. And then they go to Arrakis, and they know it's going to be dangerous. So they ask Duncan Idaho to go to the Fremen and get their alliance. And nothing really comes out of it, to be honest. It's so weird. Just go there, eat some cake, and come back, and nothing happens whatsoever. Yes, and by the way, I do have spoilers in this video, so mind that. And in the end, they're just going to be betrayed by one of their employees, Dr. Yui to be precise. And it's so weird how they did it in the movies, to be honest. So yeah, then Paul escapes with his mother Jessica, and they're going to the Fremen, and that's basically the movie. That's it. And it is so weird because, as I said, they made some changes to the previous movies / miniseries and the books. And I don't know why, because the books have so much source material you could train from. And they're so political, and also they also care about environment, and they're telling you stuff why said person is doing something. But in the movie, it's like, Politics? What is that? We've never heard of that. You don't need that. It's just ruling a planet. That's going to be easy, obviously. Yeah, it's so weird because, for example, in the books you knew, or the Atreides knew there was a traitor, and they were trying to discover who was the traitor. That was a bit of a mystery, technically, because they revealed it like in the very first few pages of the book. So I get why they would say, okay, we're going to change that up so no one's going to know that there is a traitor. But the Atreides knew and they were trying to figure it out. And in the movie, it's just like, I don't know, traitors, probably not, whatever. It's the most amazing thing because once they're trying to kill Paul and there's one person in a wall. They literally built a wall around him and they state that he's been there for 6 weeks. How did he survive in this tiny wall for 6 weeks? But yeah. It's amazing what they did in the movie. It's hilarious, to be honest. You've also got like a lot of space feed landing porn in the very first half of the movie because every 5 minutes there's just a spaceship coming down and you just watch closely as the feed comes out of it and lands on the floor. It's hilarious. It's awesome. Whoever is responsible for that, I love it. Thank you so much. But they also made some bigger changes. For example, they decided to make Dr. Keynes, who was originally white male in the books, a female black character to be more inclusive, I guess. And I don't blame them. I get that. The book is rather heavy on male roles, even though they have female characters and they do have a badass role, but they don't have black people technically, or people of color in general. But to be honest, if they want to be more inclusive and want to make a statement, why didn't they make Paul a person of color? Because his father, Leto, is in the book described with olive or dark skin. So why didn't they change it to make his father a person of color or black person? And his son Paul, the main character, the protagonist, like also a person of color or mixed skin tone. I don't want to say race. I think that's just wrong to divide people in races. But anyways, yeah, I think that would have been a greater impact, and it wouldn't have changed the story. But for Keynes, it's absolutely fine. Make him female, make him black, totally fine. Do it. The problem I have with that is that they're trying to be a bit more feminist, you might say. Again, by having a person of color and a female person in the movie. But on the same hand, they also strip said person of all their power, of all their impact, of all their importance in the whole movie. Because in the books, Keynes had a very important role. He was the ecologist, a imperial servant of the emperor, obviously. And he was also known as Liet, aka the leader of the Fremen. But in the movie, it's quite funny because they make quite sure that they tell you they know they've read the book, but they also make quite sure that they have got no clue what the book is about. Because in the end, there's just someone like, yo, Liet, what's up? And Paul, like the dummy he is standing next to us like, oh my God, who is that person? It's hilarious because, again, they're telling, yes, we know that's supposed to be the leader of them, but screw that, I guess. We can't have women in power, which is also rather shown in Lady Jessica, Paul's mother. The concubine of Duke Leto, they're not married because he needs to be able to still have a marriage with a great house for political reasons, but again, she is a Bene Gesserit, and the Bene Gesserit are in the book known to being the women, mostly, that control politics from the shadow and basically everything. So they, for example, are trained in combat. They're very skilled in it. They can use their voice to manipulate people, but they can also use the voice, which sounds like a very high-pitched in the movie. And Lady Jessica is supposed to be one of them. And oh my God, how did they fail poor Jessica? Because poor Jessica is just a whining, crying idiot. The whole movie, they stripped her of all her powers. I mean, how do you manage to have a book published in the 60s and make a movie out of it and be more sexist than in the 60s? It's beyond me, to be honest. But they're doing it for every character. Again, which is funny because in the 2000s they also made a mini-series and they gave a lot of power away from Leto to put on Jessica because Leto dies and Jessica is a reoccurring character. So it made sense that we would know more about her. And for example, they're also showing a lot of times a bull's head. It seems in the movie rather random, and it's it's so cool because it's mentioned in the book. And in the book, Jessica and Leto are talking about his father, and Jessica doesn't like Leto's father. So she doesn't want to hang his picture and the bull's head that killed him in the dining room, but wants it in a different hall where no one's ever is. So they're talking about it, and it's basically just a power talk about them, because Leto says like, no, I don't really care about your well-being or how well your stomach is while you eat, but I do care about my ancestors. And basically you could be lucky that we're not married, because then you would have to attend every dinner and you would have to see it every day. And that may sound very terrible, and it's quite funny because in the books they have like this dynamic that could be very toxic, but it's also very sweet on the other hand. But 60s. So yeah, it was more about who's in control and who's deciding what and their status. And in the movie, it's just like, oh yeah, your granddad died because he was killed by a bull, and I guess you have to be careful and not. You have to be cautious. And it just showed randomly. It's so weird. Jessica just has absolutely no role, no control over whatsoever. And whenever something's happening, she's just crying. Like literally, she's walking down a hall and she's just crying. She's outside of the door when the Reverend Mother is there and testing her son. And she's just crying there. And it's like, it's so funny because the Reverend Mother tells Paul that he's going to have a test and he might die in it. And Jessica knows that as well. And he's like, well, but I could call the guards. And the Reverend Mother is like, no, you can't, because your mother is outside of the door and she wouldn't let anyone pass. No one can get past her because she's such a badass. And then it switches to Jessica and she's just crying in front of the door. It's like, yeah, cool, I guess. But I also have to say, I do see why it is not easy to make that book into a movie, because in the book, they just talk a lot. Like really, really a lot. There's, at the very beginning, there's this one scene where Paul sits in the room and, I don't know, he's reading. And then just someone comes in and they're talking. And it's just like, hello, I am that person and you need an introduction from me. And then he goes out and the next person comes in and is like, hello, I am that person and you need an introduction from me. And the next person comes in and that goes on for a while. I was rather curious how they would handle that. I do think they did it a bit better in the movie. It could have still been a bit improved, and for example, when they fight, I would have loved if Paul would have used the table as in the book. It wouldn't be a big change, but just to have more than just a random bull's head showing up every 5 seconds. Now I want to talk also about Charney. played by Zendaya. I wasn't really convinced by her, to be honest, because whenever she's on screen, and she's a lot on screen, I've got no clue why she has so much screen time, to be honest. Maybe because the actress is rather popular currently. But she's on screen and she just looks at the camera, and it's either annoyed or she's trying to look romantic, which, to be honest, also looks half the time like she's annoyed, but that's just my opinion. In the book, it's a bit different because Paul talks to the Reverend Mother about his dreams, and he's just like, yeah, I've seen this girl on Arrakis, and I tell her a poem. And then she doesn't know a couple of words, for example, like coast, ocean, whatever, because she's from a desert planet. If they wanted to not have the white savior trope and the, like, for example, the dumb native girl that's not educated or something, then why not switch it up? Why not let Charney tell like the small poem and people like, I don't know, what is a desert? We don't have that. That would have made a bit more sense to me, instead of just showing her, giving her no role whatsoever and just letting her stare in the camera. But they also make it very look like she's going to be like the next Fremen leader, which was Liet Kynes before her. Yeah. But I mean, they stripped Liet Kynes from every role and importance, so maybe they're trying to make Charney step into that. I don't know. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, to be honest. But I guess feminism, I suppose. Maybe they're going to do it better in the next part, and they're not just adding random women and then stripping them away of all their power. But as well as the Harkonnens, because in the book, the Harkonnens, or the Baron, Vladimir Harkonnen, was described as being fat. Very, very, very thick, like obese, morbidly obese. In the book, it was described that he needed suspenders to hold his weight and still walk around. But he was described as a human being. And in the movie, they just make him and Rabban, his cousin, they make them look like non-humans. They're very pale. And the Baron has like this weird electric thingy on his back. And he just looks like not like a natural human, still human enough, but different. So it's like, oh, obviously that person is evil because he looks weird and alien. And I didn't really like that. For example, they also have this shot where he just starts floating, and he has a gown that's like 10 meters tall and still reaches the ground. It looks like he has legs that are 10 meters long, and it's so absurd. It's so weird. And yeah, I would have preferred actually to have a normal human being just a greedy asshole. And in the movie, he's just a monster that does stuff for absolutely no reason, because neither motivation is explained. They're stating that Harkonnens want to get rid of the Atreides. Why? No one knows. Why do the Atreides hate them? No one really knows. But they just do. Why did the Emperor give them Arrakis if it's so important? No one knows. So the Harkonnen want to get rid of them. Guess that's okay. And they want to make money, I suppose, out of Arrakis. Okay. And that's basically it. But also not. And it makes so little sense, because they were oppressing Arrakis for 80 years. Then the Atreides come, and then they try to get it back. And so what? Still oppress them? Whereas in the movie, they were scheming with the Emperor to get rid of the Atreides, because the Atreides were too famous, too beloved, and they were a threat to the Emperor. But the Emperor could not act against the Atreides, because then all the houses would revolt against him, because they would have been scared that they're going to be picked off one by one. So the Emperor uses the Harkonnen to get rid of the Atreides, and also sends them his special legion, the Sardaukar. And they're hiding as Harkonnen because no one can know that the Emperor is involved. But in the movie, it's just like, well, yeah, the Harkonnen would just attack, and the Emperor also attacks, and everyone knows that they attack, but no one really cares, and they completely destroy the city, which is amazing. But by the way, I do like the visuals of the last guns they've got. That looked very nice, but that's such a destructive weapon that, wow, how would everyone ever lose a fight with one of these weapons? Why are not no foot soldiers having these weapons all around? Yeah, you see it at the end when Paul is stuck in this room and they're just using a last gun and they cannot get over it because if they would touch it, it's like a lightsaber. It would just, I don't know, cut off your leg or something. So why are they fighting with knives if they've got this one in a handy size? It's beyond me. But yeah, the Outriders arrive. The Fremen completely lose their minds and like, oh my gosh, Paul is the Lisan al-Gaib. He's the one from the other planet that's going to help us because yes, white savior, go. And I guess they're very surprised that this dude can walk because till this point he hasn't done anything else. So they just walk there like thousands of people. It's like, oh my gosh, he can walk. It's great. And the Atreides, as I said, are absolutely idiots and they don't do anything. So they arrive, then they don't do anything. Then they go to visit spice mines. As in the book, an accident happens. They save them, fine. They see a worm, fine. Paul has, I don't know, a spice attack, I guess. Like an art attack. It's a spice attack. And he has a vision and he's just hallucinating. And then they put him back and it's like, yeah, that's because there was spice. Completely forgetting the spice is everywhere on this planet, even in the food and their drinks. So I don't know, maybe it was more concentrated. That's fine. And he just sees Charney again, just staring around and doing nothing. I don't know, getting screen time. Because that movie isn't long enough. And yeah, that's it. Then they have, I think it was Stilgar coming in and they talk about knives. And that's it. It's a very goofy scene because Stilgar splits on the floor. And Duncan Idaho, just as next to the Duke, is like, oh gosh, yes, we thank you for your water. And everyone's looking at what's going on. Then he spits on the table as well. It was just, I don't know. When I watched it the first time in a cinema, everyone was laughing at that. It was so weird. I don't know, it felt off, it felt goofy. The second time it still felt a bit goofy. That's it. And then they see a light outside, which, by the way, in the book, they've seen it a long time before that. And that's also the same, that Leto leaves his chamber and finds the housekeeper dead, and then he's going to get betrayed. It's so funny because they're telling you like shields that are around your body to protect you. You need a slow blade or knife or something to get through it, and then they shoot him with the serger thingy, and it just spins there. I don't know, maybe they're not meaning slow but pressure, because it was shot rather quick, but I don't know. And he's just trying to reach it, and he's not trying to get his hand up his back on the other side. He's just trying to reach it. It's very good. It looked funny, to be honest. And then we figure out that there's a traitor, or Dr. Yui is betraying them. And they also do not state that they actually thought Yui couldn't be the traitor because he's got the imperial conditioning, which means because Yui basically has the Hippocratic Oath on steroids because he cannot hurt anyone whether he wants to or not. But because the Harkonnens have his wife, so he's in a dilemma because his wife gets hurt and he's not hurting Leto, he's just shutting down the shields around the city, and then he puts a teeth in his mouth and says, okay, if you press it or if you bite on it, there's gas and you will kill the Baron, and that's our deal. And because I'll do that, I'm going to save your son and wife slash concubine. Then, and I must say, again, it looked visually stunning, and I loved it that Leto was naked there, just trying to, just looking vulnerable, and really like they've searched him and they wanted to get rid of everything that could threaten the Baron. So I like that a lot. I like that detail. And Leto wakes up, the Baron is eating, and then he's basically biting on his tooth. And everyone in the room dies instantly. And they're showing that the Baron switched on his shield. So to protect himself against the poison, the gaseous poison. And then you see these Monster Inc. people come in. Like the pest control. Trying to look, I was like, okay, shit, what happened here? And the Baron is just floating in the top corner of the room on the ceiling. And it's so weird, because in the book he just basically walks out. He was further away, and there were like 2 people in front of him, because they died before in front of him. He noticed that there was something wrong. He also had his shield on, and he just left the room as soon as they could. He wasn't just floating around the ceiling for 3 hours or something. Which, by the way, and after that there was like the coolest thing and the villainous thing that he did, because after he survived his attack, people asked him, like, yeah, okay, what do you want to do? It's like, okay, I'll go to my chamber and bring me that boy with the lovely eyes, but drag him well. I don't want to fight tonight. And then he thinks for himself that the lovely boy that he doesn't want to fight looks a lot like Paul, and yeah. So he's basically a gay pedophile. Don't get me wrong, I get why they might not make him homosexual in the combination of a pedophile, because it's a sensitive topic. But that was sending chills down my spine when I read that, and was like, oh, what a horrible person. And they changed it up in the movie, so he just kills Dr. Yui, which he never did in the books, because he had no blood on his hands. He always let other people do it, so he had plausible deniability, I guess. And the movie's like, no, I just kill it because I'm an idiot as well. Never mind that the Emperor has a woman that can basically tell if I'm telling the truth or not, but And then it switches to Jessica and Paul, and they're going to be sent to the desert again, so the Baron has plausible deniability about them. They send one deaf person with them because Jessica could use the voice, but they also gag Jessica, so she can't talk anyways. Paul is trying to use the voice, which works in the end. So they remove the gag, and Jessica's like, oh God, kill him now! They fight, they've got a crash landing. They figure out that Yui was the traitor because he writes them a letter, packs them a tent, but no still suits, which is stupid AF, to be honest. And he gives them still suits in the movie because they would have died within a couple of hours in the open desert, but whatever. Then they're walking through the desert, they find Duncan, Idaho and Liet Keynes. They walk around and they go to a station where also a bit of Fremen, and they're like they've got the special ability to hide in the sand within seconds. We've got this scene where they sit around, drink, I don't know, like a tea or something, and then they hear, oh gosh, someone's coming. Quick, hide! They're just gone. They're just vanished. They're just bottled in. They're just in the sand now. They are the sand now. Yes, they fight. They're Sadukar, so the legion from the Emperor. It's very important to note that Liet, or Dr. Keynes, is actually a servant of the Emperor, and she helps them escape. And in all the other movies, really, in the miniseries and the books, he always says, well, what are they going to do? I'm a loyal servant of the Emperor. So if they catch me, I just take that you took me hostage. And by the way, it works. And in the movie, it's just like, I'ma help you. I'll die. And I remember I was sitting in the cinema, and they show how Keynes goes out, and she's using a thumper to call a worm, because the Fremen, spoiler, ride worms, these spice worms. but no one knows it. While she's waiting for said worm, which is, by the way, so stupid because it's like their best kept secret. They're bribing the guild to have no satellites so they can't see how they're riding worms and trying to make Arrakis a greener planet. And she's just like, oh, okay, obviously these guys are 50 meters behind me, but let's call a worm. Even though that could take like up to half an hour or something. Yes, and the Sardaukar are just coming and stab her. It's like, oh god, you've been sentenced with treason on our emperor. And even though that we were trying to protect you in the book because you're still a servant of the emperor and there's absolutely no proof that you helped them, we're just going to stab and kill you. Yeah, as I said, without politics. So Jessica and Paul just walk through the desert and they're doing this unrhythmic walk, which is closer to the book as in the previous movies. And might I say, taking a step, swoosh, step, wait, swoosh, step, and again, that is a rhythm. All I'm saying, it's not just dum, 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 dum. What's a rhythm? But anyways, they do it. It looks interesting and it looks so exhausting, to be honest. Oh my god, they've got to be exhausted afterwards. There's also this very awkward scene where they're changing in their still suits and just Paul looks at his mother and Jessica looks at him and it's like, oh gosh, I've got to see my son naked. And I've got to see my mother naked. I'm not trying if they were like, okay, our lives are going to change now and that's hard and stuff like that. But no, it just felt like, mommy's naked. Then they met the Fremen. They're basically like, oh, there's plants. And I haven't seen plants in that shot, to be honest. So they go there. They meet a worm. They run away. It's in the trailer. It looks stunning. Again, there Paul also meets Charney because they meet them. And then they fight. And then, who was it? Janice comes. It's like, oh my gosh, this woman just fought Stilgar and survived and Stilgar lost, so now I have to fight said woman. But I cannot fight said woman for absolutely no reason. So someone has to fight for her. And she's like, okay, Paul is going to fight. They do. Charney and Paul have a conversation and Charney's like, oh, here, take my Chris knife. It's a very important knife for them. So you'll die honorable. The dude is very good, apparently. And Paul just beats him. He obliterates him. They're talking around like, oh gosh, is he toying with him? Why isn't he just killing him? And Jessica's like, oh no, he hasn't killed before. Well, then Paul just kills him. Then we've got the most beautiful shot in history of this movie. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. I'm showing it to you here. Everything here looks absolutely divine, I have to say. Then they're just walking around trying to get to the next siege, their outlook, or the place where they live. And then they see in the distance a person riding a worm. And Paul's like, oh gosh. And Charney, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you don't know. White savior dude that's going to save us. You probably Lisan al-Gaib. And it just ends. To be honest, as I said, it was rather weird because this fight also took a lot of credibility away from Jessica because I don't know why she couldn't fight that. It was explained a bit differently in books. But yeah. And I liked the shot where you see Paul and Jessica standing in the desert looking at this burning city and know Paul's father is dead. They've lost their home, they've lost their friends, they've lost their impact, their influence. And then maybe a shot on the desert and it's like, okay, we've got a new path in front of us, which is how the first part of the book basically ended. Maybe also let him have his visions. That's fine, I guess. But the movie just suggests that it's going to be a white savior trope. I hope they're not going for it because it wasn't necessarily in the book that way. But Paul wasn't that good of a person in the books anyway. Not that he's a good person in the movie. I mean, he's just there. Stuff happens and he's not doing anything. But Jessica isn't doing anything, and Leto isn't doing anything. To be honest, by the end, they all deserve to die, because the only people that actually did anything, even though they've got motivation or reason or whatever, were the Harkonnens and maybe the Fremen. But even they don't do shit in this movie. You've seen like they're rebelling at the very beginning, and that's it. You've never really seen them. They don't do anything. I just expected more of this movie. I mean, they were trying so hard to get it right. They put in details from the books. They tried to be inclusive and put in more people of color than there were originally are, which I get. And it's nice, to be honest. And they were trying to get more women in it as well, which I get is nice as well. But the execution was just not done well. Yes, have it, do it, fine, but don't take all their importance away. That's just, I don't know. I do hope, I think they will make a second part. I do hope they will try to keep the women a bit more important, or let them have whatever they have in the book. And I don't know, include any reason, because now everyone currently knows that the forces of the Emperor were there. He has no plausible deniability. And if you put in politics in the second part, where were they in the first one? How they're going to explain that, I've got no clue. And I think that will differ a lot from the book. And I think they could have done better. Did I enjoy watching it? Yes, I did. I loved it. As I said, the visuals are stunning. The CGI, oh my gosh, it is so nice. I think the actor of Paul did a great job. I don't know why Charney is there. I don't know why Zendaya is there. She's just so prominent in the movie, in the trailers. I don't know why. There's absolutely no reason for it. The music by Hans Zimmer was extraordinary. It was awesome. I loved it. It sounded so nice. There were occasional parts where I was a bit confused how and why they said set piece. But to be honest, I'm not educated enough about film music to talk about something like that. But I link someone in the description box that is more educated about music in general that might do this movie as well. But if not, he has amazing videos, so still check it out. Yeah, so I hope you've had fun watching this, listening to this. Feel free to express your own opinion within the comments and show your like or dislike if you want to. And have a nice day.